Words have power. Words have a lot of power. And when it comes to recovering from a mental health issue, from healing something in ourselves emotionally, the words that are used to describe what we're facing are super, super important. And there's been a paper released recently about how depression is described amongst some of the leading mental health institutions and organizations in the world. And considering how that language that's used to describe depression might affect someone who's going through depression is something I want to talk about with you today. So let's think about mental health issues, our diagnoses, and the way that it affects our thinking, the way that it affects our ability to recover. Let's talk about it. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I work with people who are struggling with mood disorders of all kinds. I specialize in working with eating disorders and body image, as well as people who are recovering from trauma. But let's talk about this article that is about this recent research study. This article that I'm going from is published by the British Psychological Society. I'm going to put an online link down below so you can read it if you want. And it's titled, Influential Descriptions of Depression Are Often Misleading. Recent work finds widespread misleading descriptions of depression on authoritative mental health websites, published July 2024. So for me, I'm so happy to see this come out. I'm so happy that people are putting this sort of stuff in the public view because, again, how we talk about what we're going through, particularly with mental health, has a huge impact on how we recover from that thing. So much of it is sort of either influenced or straight up constructed by our meaning that we create inside of ourselves. So for example, if I am feeling like, this anxiety I have is going to last forever, there's a higher likelihood that my anxiety is going to last a long time, that I'll be hyperfixated on the anxiety, noticing it, and maybe not noticing other things about either myself or my experiences that are contrary to that belief that I'm an anxious person, I'm always going to be that way. And I'm using anxiety as an example, but I think really for many mental health disorders, I would venture to say most mental health problems that we go through, how we describe it is very, very important. And it kind of works in this way. We can almost kind of like doom ourselves with our own words, into having a problem that is more difficult to recover from. So this one really focuses on depression. But they highlighted, as it says here, the surprising prevalence of misleading information about depression on authoritative mental health websites. So, this is even worse, right? Like, if you're telling yourself something about what you're going through that is misleading, hey, that's one thing. But if you're looking to someone who's supposed to be the authority on this and they're saying something misleading, oh man, we are in for, some struggles. And the way they go into this thing is really important. I think when I describe it right now, you may think, it's kind of subtle. I'm not sure if I kind of get what the big deal is. But the big deal is really what mental health disorders are, or specifically looking at here depression. When we say the word depression, what does that really mean? What is it really? And there's a lot of confusion about what it means to say someone is depressed or someone is recovering from depression. So, they go on to it here. These descriptions often allude to depression as the cause of low mood, are at odds with the descriptive nature of this diagnosis, and could lead those who suffer it to misunderstand the reasons for their symptoms. So straight away you might be like, what in the heck? So this is the thing. This whole book, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, social workers look through when they're kind of classifying a disorder that someone's suffering from, it's important to realize that what they're looking at is your symptoms. So if you come to, in the case of depression, if you go to a therapist and you say, hey, I'm not motivated, I'm sleeping too much, I'm feeling very low, I'm not eating very well, those are all symptoms, and those symptoms cluster together around this description called depression. But depression is a descriptive term. It's a description for what you're going through. It's not a cause. What's causing that depression is a lot more complicated and confusing for a lot of people. Are you depressed because of something that's going on in your life? Are you depressed because of a recent loss? Is the depression related to, some other things that you're going through in your health? Is it something that maybe has been around from childhood? And all of those things are where we actually find the cause. I'll get onto a bit of that later. I know, from what we normally hear about depression, we think about it in a very medicalized term that, depression is a disease, and it's a disease of maybe an imbalance of, various happiness hormones in my body, and that is depression, and then depression causes the rest of this stuff. This article and this research is really pinning down the fact that we are stuck in that way of thinking, which is not exactly accurate. So we'll come on to that later, but let's go on to what they say here. So they go on to say diagnosing depression is done on the basis of symptoms rather than underlying causes, as might be done for non-psychiatric diagnosis. For example, this is a really good example that they give. One can have a tumor which causes a cough, fatigue, or weight loss, yet you can have these symptoms without having a tumor, or have a tumor and experience none of these symptoms. A diagnosis of depression, on the other hand, is made precisely by its symptoms. So they write in their paper published in Psychopathology that one cannot be diagnosed with depression if they do not experience the symptom of depressed mood. Despite this, descriptions of depression often imply or explicitly state that depression causes low mood and other symptoms rather than describes them. So in this new paper, the Finnish team, these two Finnish people whose names I can't pronounce, set out to understand how widespread this issue is online. Basically what they did is they went online and they Googled various terms. You can read more about it here. And they found, influential authoritative websites. Some of the websites that they found, that they drew from, were the World Health Organization, the American Psychiatric Association, the National Institute of Mental Health, the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. And a lot of these sites used language that explicitly described depression as causally explanatory, which means, you have low mood because of depression, rather than depression describes, the word depression, saying you are diagnosed with depression, describes this collection of symptoms. So, a really important thing about this, and I think this is why a lot of us, when we're coming to therapy and we're trying to deal with depression, we're trying to deal with some kind of mood problem, is we get stuck in this circular loop, is because, we feel like that I'm going to get better when I get rid of this symptom. And, the symptom is a effect, it's not the cause. So when we think about fixing depression, we can certainly work with, well, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you become very isolated. Let's start to kind of ease that. Let's see if we can maybe step back into social life, do some things to correct your sleeping, your eating, take care of yourself better. But that may adjust some of the symptoms of depression, but it's not going to fix the causes of it. And when I meet people in therapy and they're getting kind of trapped in that hopelessness, trapped in this kind of me and my depression, as if they're going to just be friends with their depression forever. The depression is always going to be sitting on their shoulder. It seems to me to be much more related to having this idea that depression causes these symptoms and depression is always there. So I'm always going to feel a little bit sad. I think that what I see on the ground in therapy is that we all are going to have, sometimes really extreme mood fluctuations like you're going to get if, say, you get diagnosed with depression, if you get diagnosed with some other disorder, anxiety or something else, really intense mood fluctuations. And then we get these names for them. Oh, this is depression, this is anxiety, or this is something else, some other label that we've given to it. But when we try to recover, and naturally when you're working with a therapist, or maybe you're doing self-help or something else, you're going to be more focused on, okay, where are my symptoms today? And when we notice that the mood is a bit down, or the mood is a bit more anxious, or the mood is, a bit numb, or it's not considered quote unquote normal, then we, have more evidence that, oh, the depression is still there. The depression is still causing me to have this really, difficult set of emotions, or low motivation, or all the other things that depression can have, or anxiety, or whatever it is. So this, to me, is a really important thing to get our head around, especially if you yourself are in a position where you're dealing with something. Could be depression, anxiety, could be an eating disorder. What are the causes of them? There is a very attractive thing about having medicalized sort of biological causes, and there are theories of, okay, well, this particular chemical, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, whatever, these happiness chemicals, they are, not as high in people who have depression. Maybe that is a cause. The problem with a lot of these biological chemical explanations is, number one, when I say theory, that's exactly what they are. They're a theory. Our body is in constant interplay, constant, back and forth with both what's going on internally in our thoughts, with our self-care, how we're eating, how we're sleeping, what we're taking into our body, and also with our environment, with things that are there physically in our environment, people, relationships, all that kind of stuff. And how our body responds to that stuff is with, constant adjustments in the fluctuation of both maybe hormones that make us happy, hormones that make us stressed, hormones that make us feel low, sad. And then, we pick up those labels to go with those. But the problem with that very medicalized view, or seeing things like depression and anxiety, or other mood disorders as the cause of the problems that we're having, rather than a description of what we're going through, is that it, in the end, leaves us a lot more helpless. A lot more like, well, now I have this problem. Kind of like how they use the example of tumor here. Oh, now I have this kind of disease that's kind of living in me, and it's going to feel really hard to get rid of when we use that kind of language. If, on the other hand, we see it as, okay, this is a set of descriptions, a descriptive term for where I am right now in my life and what I'm going through, and bring more curiosity into what could be the potential causes of this. You can do that on your own through like journaling or self-reflection in some way, maybe meditation, that kind of stuff. You can do it with the help of a therapist. You may need the help of a doctor to ease certain of those symptoms so that you can get deeper into those causes. But when we see those things that are just a description, as if that's the cause, then we're led to feeling like, okay, I can never be free of this. Or maybe I need to take medication forever. Or this is a disease that I'm always going to have. So it's very kind of, a subtle shift in descriptions. I love the fact that this study is out there. I think that it's much healthier, it's much more realistic and empowering to think about the disorders that we have as certain states that we are going through as descriptions. But I would love to hear what you think, how you respond to this. Again, I will link this article as well as the original study down in the description. Have a read. Let me know what you think. As always, I would love not just to hear from you, but I would very much appreciate a like, for you you to subscribe. And until next time, do take care of yourself.